Now let's go ahead and multiply polynomials. So multiplying polynomials we do in algebra quite frequently. And this is where the basis of our algebra really comes to fruition, if you will. When we multiply polynomials, and we're just going to name poly as many, even though we can multiply monomials to binomials to trinomials to however it goes. Okay, so if you hear me use those terms, mono means one, poly means many, bi, of course, is two, tri, three, etc., etc., etc. So keep those things in mind. So when we multiply polynomials, let's start by multiplying monomials first. Let's go 4a squared. B. Let's take it times a negative 2a squared b cubed. All right. Well, this we've already done. This is something that we have discussed when we were talking about our rules of multiplying exponents. So we take the 4 times the negative 2 and get negative 8. I have a's. I'm multiplying their bases, which means I'm adding their exponents, and I get 4 of those a's all multiplied together. And I have b's. Outside I have 1, inside I have 3. So here again, I have 4 of those b's all multiplied. And that's all I'm doing. When I multiply monomials, it was the same exact thing as when I reviewed. This is a review of going back over my multiplication exponent rule. Well, let's move on to another problem here. Let's make it a little bit harder. Not much. 2a times the quantity of 3a minus 1. All right, and now we have to remember how to distribute, and that distribution rule is through multiplication. So we're going to take that 2a times that quantity of 3a minus 1. The problem is we have 2 terms inside of there. Well, if we understand that we have 2 terms, that just means that we multiply the 2a on the outside twice. It gets multiplied into both of those guys, right? So 2a times 3a, 2 times 3 is 6, a times a is a squared, and then I take the 2a times the negative 1, I get negative 2, and I just have the 1a. So really, to distribute, not all that different or not all that difficult. Let's distribute and make it a little bit longer on this next problem. So let's go a negative m squared n. I'm going to take that times the quantity of 3m squared n minus m n, and then plus 1. So now I'm multiplying a monomial times a trinomial, or 3 terms on the inside. Not a huge deal. Let's go ahead and change colors, because that last one I wasn't real happy with. Let's just distribute it to all 3 terms. And our book doesn't have that luxury, so be careful when you're reviewing and you're looking at your text. So when I distribute the negative m squared n to the 3m squared n, I'm going to get a negative 3 with my constants. I have m's, I add my exponents and get 4. I have n's, I add my exponents and get 2. A negative times a negative into that second term is a positive. M squared times m, I have m's, I have 3 of them. I have n's, I have 2 of them. And I come back and distribute my negative m squared n to the 1, which is just the same as writing it down again, which is m squared n. A negative times a positive is a negative, and that's how I got that answer to be negative. And there is my finalized answer. Now, a lot of the times we do this, we're really getting ready for this guy. All right? Where we take a binomial times a binomial. And we will do this so much. I mean, if you take a look at any textbook, we do this a lot. And we get an answer which is actually a quadratic, which is things that we solve for. We have multiple answers. We use application-wise. All right, so everything we're geared up today is really for this moment right here. A binomial times a binomial. And if your teachers in the past have taught you this, they're right. Normally, I'm not a trick guy. I want you to know everything there is, and we will run through this. But if you understand FOIL, our firsts multiply, then our outsides, then our insides, and our last, this does help you with this problem. Notice it didn't help you beforehand, and we're going to do one more problem after this. It won't really help you there. Everything that we've done works into FOIL. Okay, but FOIL is not a two-way street. It's just a one-way street. It only works with binomials. And what it says is our firsts, right? Which is our first terms together. So we get 2t squared. And then we're going to go with our outsides. So our outside terms here. Let me rephrase this here a little bit. Let's back this guy up. This is my first. All right. Now let's go ahead and do my outsides, which is plus 8t. So that guy's my outsides. Result of my outsides. And then let's go I, which is insides. So now I have a negative 1t, or just simply negative t, which is my insides. And then I do my last. And a negative 1 and a positive 4 is a negative 4. And I end up with my last. So you can see that this FOIL thing works. The only problem here is when we do FOIL, and a true FOIL problem, a vast majority of the time, we have things that combine like terms. So you've got to be careful of this. Because my t's are the same term. Combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, 8t minus 1t gets me 7t. Everything else drops down exactly the way it was beforehand. And it is a positive because sign of the larger. And there is my quadratic on that guy. And you will get ample practice because in every textbook, this is a vast majority of this section. So refer back to this slide. I do want to go to one more problem, which is a longer one. Just to illustrate that the method behind FOIL, the distribution property, actually works in every single thing. So let's do one more problem. And this one's going to get a little bit long. 3n squared minus 2n plus 4, right? All right. 2n squared plus 6n minus 2. All right, so we're going to multiply two trinomials, which is fine. And as you took a look before and review the slides, please, all we're doing is distributing. And as we did in FOIL, we took a look, and I'm going to back that up real quick, because in FOIL, if you really take a look, we distributed the 2t to every single term on the backside grouping, so the blue arrows. And then we came back, once we distributed the 2t to everything, we come back and get to the 1, to the negative 1, the red arrows. So we distribute the negative 1 to every single term in that grouping. Well, that's exactly how we're going to work this problem here. We're going to take this 3n squared and take it times every single term. And when we do that, here we go. We get 6n to the 4th plus 18 n to the 3rd when I add my exponents minus 6n squared. So we've got that part. Now we're going to come back to my next term, which is my negative 2n term, and I'm going to distribute it to every single term in the backside there, backside group. So I get a negative 4n cubed. I get a negative 12n squared. And I get a positive 4n. So please don't let redundancy be any harder. It's just redundancy. It's just over and over and over again. And yes, I still have one more guy because I haven't touched this 4, which means I distribute this 4 to every single term. the backside group. So here we go. So I'm going to get plus 8. I may run out of board space on this one. N squared plus 6n minus 8. Look at that. Doesn't look like I did. We're good. All right. So this guy turned out to be a very, very long thing. And just like FOIL, we have to understand that there are terms that will combine. So as we're combining these, I only get 1 6 into the 4th. I like to do different color, different shapes if I can. Whoops, that guy was backwards. I don't really want to do that because it should have been this guy. So let's go ahead. Let's delete that. Let's see if I can get that negative 6n squared out of there as red. All right, so hopefully that didn't screw anybody up. So then we get a positive 14n cubed. Now I go with my n squareds, right? So there's an n squared, here's an n squared, here's an n squared. And I add up all my, or combine like terms of my green circles, and I get negative 18 plus 8 gets me negative 10n squared. And then I've got an n term here, an n term there, and 4 and 6 is a positive 10n, and all I'm left with now is 8, and that is a negative 8. So, as you can see, something that's a little bit longer, it's just time and time and time again. Don't fret about it, just work it step by step.